Brewing has been around for millennia. Historians think the earliest alcoholic beverage might have been produced as long ago as 7000 BC. What separates brewing from other processes, which have been around for such a long time, is that the process is fundamentally almost unchanged. There are four main ingredients which have been used to produce beer or ale for hundreds and hundreds of years. Water, known as liquor; malt, which is grain, usually barley, wheat, or rye, that has been steeped, germinated, and dried; hops, which add flavor; and yeast, which allows fermentation to take place, giving the drink its alcoholic content. The process itself is simple. Malt is crushed into a powder called grist, exposing the starch from the grains. The grist is then combined with water, or liquor, and heated. This converts the starch into sugars, which will later ferment. The mixture of liquor and grist is called wort. The wort is then filtered to remove spent grains, and the filtered wort is then boiled to sterilize and remove impurities. Once hops have been added and the water boiled, it is sent to the whirlpool to allow solids from the hops to settle, leaving a clearer wort behind. The drink is now put into a vat where yeast is added, beginning the fermentation process. Breweries create their own recipes by tinkering with different temperatures and lengths of time each step should use, as well as what hops are added and when. Around the 18th century, when the Industrial Revolution was starting to take place, breweries were successful businesses to have, but like most others, they required sizable capital to build up the business. Most entrepreneurs who started a brewery first went to family and friends to help raise the money needed, since borrowing from relatives was almost always less interest than borrowing from the bank. The familial circle was commonly the financial backup for breweries. For instance, when grain harvests were bad, production went down, and the owners typically asked relatives to help keep the business afloat, with promises of portions of the profit in good, better harvest years. This often led to members of the same family owning and running the business together and passing it down within the family. It's quite common, even today, for descendants of the founding families to still be running the business. During this time in the 18th century, more laws started to be passed concerning alcohol, specifically licensing laws and duties. Licensing laws saw to a distinction between types of brewers. There was the common brewer, who was allowed to sell to publications, pubs, and other such sellers as victuallers. Victuallers had a license to sell their wares in their own warehouse, alehouse, pub, or other establishment. Because of this, victuallers did well in cities and where they could directly supply their own pubs and taverns. Common house brewers tended to build near rivers or ports for ease of transport for their goods. Generally, victuallers brought in more money and were able to expand their business faster, while common house brewers often got into other trades to increase their revenue. By this time, brewing was known to be a profitable business, and in England, King Charles II put a new duty on beers and ales. This tax was meant to bring money to the government, but also to secure the larger breweries' success by making it more difficult for smaller businesses to compete. The duty was such that a barrel of strong beer was taxed more heavily than that of a weaker beer. Brewers found a way to cheat the system, however, by splitting a batch of strong beer into half weak beer and half very strong beer. Once half the batch was recorded and taxed as a lighter beer, they would then combine the two into one batch of strong beer. The government combated this by passing new duties, and with every new change and new duty, the government got more of what it wanted, and many smaller breweries merged with larger companies as they lost profits. One reason brewing was such a successful business during the time of the Industrial Revolution was because it didn't rely on new inventions to improve. Most of its progress came from redesigning and carefully planning the layout of the brewery in order to scale up its production. For example, by utilizing gravity, the process could begin in a lifted vat. Then, when ready, a valve would be opened, allowing it to flow down to the next stage. This improvement required no new workers and improved efficiency greatly. Storage rooms that used to hold many barrels of beer were turned into room-sized vats which could hold considerably more liquid. The one invention that did aid the process was the steam engine, which replaced horse-powered grinding wheels, requiring few workers and improving efficiency further. Other progresses included the invention of a device to measure fermentation or the strength of beer, and the mathematical formula allowing for more advanced business models, which could take into account future shortages of raw materials and surpluses. Modern brewing is fundamentally the same as it has been for the past hundreds of years, the main difference being higher efficiency systems, larger scaling capabilities, and much more exact and repeatable recipes.